Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of United Talks podcast. And today we're going to be doing the tactical breakdown of how Michael Carrick lost the winning streak that we had against um, Newcastle. Tough game to take, a tough game to accept. The unbeaten run is over. Most of us are disappointed with the way things panned out and everything in between. But it is what it is. We still got to try to kind of accept what we have and move on. But yeah, the unbeaten streak is over. And yeah, it is what it is. Anyway, so how did that happen? Like, how did Man United lose to 10 men? 10 men Everton. We have to talk about it. We have to break it down. Like, March 2026, Premier League, basically a relentless beast. 1 year, 1 minute, you're sitting in third in the table, orchestrating a tactical comeback at Old Trafford that feels like, the start of a new dynasty. And then the next, you're watching a 90th minute winner fly past you at St. James's Park, against 10 men, against 10 men. Let that sink in. Right. Now, you're welcome to this very special, extended edition of the United Talks podcast, Tactical Breakdown. And today, we're basically going to be analyzing, as we always do after every game, analyzing the game. And that's a massive job, analyzing the duality of Michael Carrick's Manchester United. First, we're going to look under the hood of the 2-1 victory over Crystal Palace. How did Michael Carrick engineer the comeback, the nightmare start, and we'll look at the tactical trap that forced forced us to actually, lose the game against Newcastle. Now the fact is, since Boxing Day, we've talked about Michael Carrick as if he's had, since January 5th. As if he's had the Midas touch, everything he touched turns to 3 points. People are saying, "Oh, Michael, at this point, everything he touched turns to gold." The Carrick Revolution was a freight train that actually didn't seem to have a middle or an end. But today, we have to talk about, the R word, and that is reality. So let's break it down. Just the reality of how things have panned out for this team and what could have been, basically, for us at United. It's hard to accept, it's hard to take, but it's one of those things we have to actually talk about. It's unavoidable for us. Now, we're going to be breaking it down, and we're going to be, performing some kind of forensic autopsy on Man United's first defeat in 2026. In the 2026 era, a 2-1 loss to underperforming Newcastle that feels particularly stinging, because of 45 minutes. And we had the numerical advantage as well. And how does a third place team playing with an extra man for an entire half concede a 90th minute, winner to Will Osula, right? Was it a failure of the system, a failure of the finishing, or simply the Ramsdale Wall proving impossible to scale? We are also going to do we're going to go deep today, analyzing the Yoro-Lammens miscommunication, the Mbeumo XG nightmare, and why our midfield pivots struggled to pick the lock of a disciplined 10-man block. The unbeaten run is dead in the waters. The top 4 race is wide open. Let's figure out why. I'm going to break it down. I'm going to talk about how the game started. Maybe we'll talk about this first 4th minute, then I'll tell you how I felt about the first game. The first takeaway from this game is the foundations that were shaky before the first whistle even blew. Despite Harry Maguire and Luke Shaw returning, which on paper should have made us, a fortress, we looked terrified in the opening 20 minutes. And that's the part I want to talk about. We actually looked terrified in the first 20 minutes. And it was disappointing to look at the team really struggling, very slow, very lethargic. There was no tempo. There was no speed. It felt like, it felt like the game from Crystal Palace was, many people have been saying this. The game from Crystal Palace was kind of like what took out the wind off our sail. Or maybe because we just played a game 3 days before that. Or maybe it's been bad for the last 3 or 4 games. And when you say this, people are triggered. We've been struggling. We considered against West Ham, and it was a struggle to come back. The last game, just to look at the game list, the last game where we played with so much panache and with so much intensity could probably be that Spurs game, because actually Spurs were not good, right? Spurs are a bottom table team. If we're going to be very honest here, right? Spurs were not good. So we're going to look at basically the transfer window with regards to, I mean, not the transfer window, the fixtures, the Man United fixtures, right? So let's look at the last 5 games. We played against Crystal Palace. We went down a goal and scored 2-1. We played against Everton. We went down. We didn't go down a goal, but we managed to scrape a win. We played against West Ham. We went down a goal and scored 2-1. So the last 4 games have been bad. I mean, and scored 1-1. The last 4 games have been relatively bad. But when you look at Spurs, yeah, Spurs were so bad on the day. If you look at it, technically, Spurs were so bad on the day. Now, if you look at the overall stats of the squad, we're not doing bad when it comes to output, like goals, assists, and it's evenly distributed, with Bruno having 14 assists with 7 goals. Mbeumo has 3 assists with 9 goals. Šeško has 1 assist with 8 goals. Cunha has 2 assists with 6 goals. I mean, Šeško has 9 goal contributions. Mbeumo has 12 goal contributions. Bruno has, as always, you know how this guy does his thing. He's over 20 goal contributions, 21 goal contributions. Casemiro has 8 goal contributions. Even Maguire has 2 goal contributions. Cunha has 8 goal contributions as well, same as Casa. And then obviously Mbeumo has 2 goal contributions. Now you look at the last 5. You look at the fixture. The previous, maybe from like, so against Fulham, where we had the intensity for the most part, and then eventually it petered out and we almost lost that game. We had to come back from 2-2 to 3-2. Arsenal as well at some point. So the intensity has been questionable since then. And for the first time in a while, I've actually seen some sense in what a person like Mark Goldbridge has been saying and said in his last analysis, when he said that the intensity was high, always high under Ruben Amorim, but the intensity dropped when he left after the first 2-3 games. We played against Man City, Arsenal, Fulham. The intensity, after those games, the intensity seemed to have petered out again. And it was due to so many factors. He said basically we stopped training hard, we reduced the intensity of training and made it sharp and snap. I mean, you could see that on any social media platform. The media was saying, oh, the players like the manager because of the way he's made the training sessions really quick, sharp and snap. I mean, when you look at it, technically this is not a championship club. So I don't expect you to be doing a fast and snap training. You should be doing an intensive training because you know what the target is. But it is what it is. So yeah. Now, before we go on to that, I'll just quickly show you a starting lineup at the time. I was starting on the tactics board. I was starting formation. So it started with a 3-4-3. I mean, a 4-2-3-1. And 4-2-3-1. This game we started with Mazraoui on the right, Maguire, Yoro. This is Maguire. This is Yoro, and then you had your what's his name? You had Luke Shaw on the left, right? Just give me 1 quick second. So this is Luke Shaw. This is Kobe Mainoo, Casemiro, Bruno, Mbeumo, Cunha, and Benjamin Šeško. You had that, right? You also had a situation where you had to decide for yourself what you wanted to achieve with regards to the position of the team. At some point, Luke Shaw was the fly fullback, while I think Dalot too was also the fly fullback, right? Was also a fly fullback, so we had these two somewhere in this position, right? And then at some point, Kobe Mainoo would leave Casemiro and join the forward like this. Wasn't Dalot, was not Nuzai Mazraoui. Nuzai Mazraoui was kind of like temporarily the stay fullback. Luke Shaw was a lot higher if you look at that game. And you had Kobe Mainoo who joined Bruno like this, and then you had Cunha who dropped in, right? So it was kind of like a 2-2-6, right? Because Newcastle were a bit narrow. But then at some point you had your Luke Shaw who drop, and you had your Mazraoui who drop, and you had your Casa here. Because when they beat us with the ball, just look at the ball. When they beat us with the ball, at some point I saw Casemiro running and then just Minu jogging casually, right? So it's a bit tough to actually look at that. And at some point Minu was here trying to defend. I think Shaw was here, Minu was here, trying to defend Trippier from crossing. That was that 4th-minute cross from Trippier right into that box that really like threw me off, because I was looking at him like, why is Minu jogging like this? Why is he so slow and lethargic? And Trippier put that cross in that 4th minute, and the tactical day one stuff, which is like what you should be avoiding. But Leny and Yoro-Lammens opted to leave the hopeful ball, and it hit the frame of the goal. In a high-stakes Champions League race, the lack of vocal dominance from the keeper or senior centre-back is a red flag. And we need to work on it. In as much as we want to kind of like maybe make things look like we have to, be lenient with these guys. I mean, yeah, no doubt. Yoro is young and can be seen as inexperienced and all. But we also have to say the fact when necessary, right? High press versus high recovery was also another situation that we noticed in the game. Newcastle's confidence was sky high. Elanga and Javi Barnes were pinning our fullbacks deep, like we saw a lot of in that time. When Casemiro won the ball in his own box, he was immediately swarmed by Joe Linton, and this is where Carrick's system struggled, right? Usually we play out of the press with ease, but also our super press resistant Mbeumo was nowhere to be seen because he was almost mostly dispossessed, right? Usually we play out the back, but St. James's Park factor, factors forced uncharacteristic errors from players like Mazraoui and Yoro, and we were lucky to not be 2-0 down before we even registered a shot on target, and that was even an issue, when you think about it in the grand scheme of things, right? In the grand scheme of things, that was an issue. Yeah, and it was tough. It's actually tough to accept. It's actually tough to kind of let yourself get carried away. Let yourself get carried away that Man United is back. That's the thing. Sometimes you need this reality check to actually just make you realize that there are certain things that maybe you might think you might have had that's not the reality, right? There are certain things that you might think that you must have had that was not the reality. So that was the nervy foundation that we had. The first half chaos that happened at the team. We struggled. We couldn't even get a shot on target, and it could have probably been 2-0. We would have probably been 2-0 down. Then you have the phase 2 of the game where the Mbeumo missed the goal, and then we had the penalty paradox. We'll talk about that sliding doors moment in the 42nd minute. Mbeumo had a chance. Leny usually plays a brilliant ball into Šeško, who finds Mbeumo. After Ramsdale makes a superb save from Menu, the ball ricochets to Mbeumo. At that level, there is a 90% chance you have to score that goal. But he fires it into the crowd. Tactically, Mbeumo has been brilliant as an inside forward this season, but his shot selection when the ball is probably bubbling in the box remains one of his weaknesses, which obviously at some point there was even one pass in the second half of Menu that Bruno found Mbeumo. Instead of poking it with his left foot, he turned and tried to shoot pass across the post with his right foot. And that was, poke it and be hopeful, right? You have that clean pass and you went and turned around. Now also the Jacob Ramsey red card and the Gordon penalty. The game swung on 2 refereeing decisions. Jacob Ramsey gets a second yellow card for simulation, and it was a tactical gift for Michael Carrick. But instead of settling the game, it created a chaotic vacuum. And I said this in a WhatsApp group that we're on when I said that basically part of the reasons why this is happening is because I think Anthony Gordon was going to eventually be a 2-player in one, because they were going to kind of switch to a 4-3-2. And that meant that Anthony Elanga, wide forward, and Anthony Gordon, wide forward, who was playing as a striker on the day, could actually be one of the reasons why we kind of struggle in this game. These two players, did what was necessary, spread and split the center backs to mark them 1v1, and then eventually attack our fullbacks and pin them down. So technically, they're pinning down 4 players. When you look at it technically, they are pinning down 4 players. They are attacking Shaw, attacking Mazraoui, and then you're pinning down Yoro and Maguire, and having the opportunity to actually allow for someone like Joe Linton to jump into the box late. It gives us a problem, especially in the midfield. And if you don't have pacing midfielders like we had with Kobe Mainoo and Casemiro, we tend to struggle, right? We tend to struggle. I remember, when we were struggling under Ruben Amorim, I kept telling fans to calm down. But this time around, it's not a calm down situation. It's a proper flaw that we're seeing in the team that needs to be corrected or needs to be talked about, right? Now, Jacob Ramsey gets a red card, a second yellow and a red card. Now, Anthony Gordon, who was the best player on the pitch for Newcastle, forced his way between Mazraoui and Fernandes. And Fernandes tried to tackle to help. Now, the tactical error from this is, why is our captain, Bruno Fernandes, having to track back into the box to double team Gordon alongside a fullback? Excuse me. It showed a lack of midfield screening, basically, from the team. Gordon drew the contact, the penalty was clinical, and suddenly United were chasing a game against 10 men who had something to defend. And I said, if these guys want to keep this win, they would defend the box in a low block. And they did, right? Now, we'll talk about phase 3, just to not waste your time. Why 10 men was harder than 11. This is one of the core of our breakdown today. Like, the 10 men paradox is the situation we've had for twice this season now, against Everton and now against Newcastle. We even had 10 men against Chelsea, we beat them. 10 men against Crystal Palace, we beat them. When Jacob Ramsey was sent off, Newcastle switched to a 4-3-2, right? Then they narrowed their defensive lines and dared United to go wide. And that was a fact. And we tried. There was nothing we didn't do. But they had Trippier, they had Lewis Hall, feasting on our wingers, right? Trippier was constantly pushing Cunha, constantly. They narrowed their defensive lines and dared United to go wide. The lack of lock picking was the issue as well. We've had that against low block teams. Carrick's United thrives on verticality and fast transitions through the middle. But when Newcastle sat deep, there were no gaps to transition into. We had 65% ball possession in the second half, but our first real attempt didn't come until the 75th minute, and that's a shame, right? Then there was the Ramsdale factor as well, right? We have to give credit where credit is due, and Ramsdale produced a masterclass, just like Jordan Pickford as well against Everton, right? The header from Euro in the 75th minute was, heading into the top corner or like the bottom. He headed it down, but Ramsdale repelled it, and the Xerxes long range effort as well, Ramsdale. The Kobe one in the first half, I think Ramsdale as well, same thing. Was it second half or whatever? Then there was now the tactical stagnation, which is what, most people might tend to deny, but you actually become very predictable. United became very predictable. We kept funneling the ball to Bruno, hoping for a miracle cross, but with Newcastle playing a low block, Benjamin Šeško was being marked by 3 players at once, and that is why I thought Michael Carrick could have done something where take out Šeško, bring on Ahmad, then put Mbeumo centrally. If he's missing sitters, that's fine. Put Mbeumo centrally, or you take Šeško off, bring on Xerxes and keep some technical players in. Xerxes can be able to hold the ball, have opportunities to attempt, but you kept Šeško all through as well, kept Xerxes on as well. So that was also another situation that, Benjamin Šeško was marked by 3 players at once. We failed to overload the half spaces. We needed players like Ahmad and Xerxes to drop deep and drag Newcastle's centre backs out of position. That's how I could have taken Šeško, because it was easy to mark, and when you mark him out, it's like you're playing 10 against 10, right? But we stayed too rigid in our 4-3-3, 4-2-3-1, 4-4-4-2, 4-1-4-1 at some point. These were the things, and 3-2-5 as well. And it was the 3-2-5 that they used to counter against us, right? We put the whole thing forward. And we've had Senne Maguire up front again. You needed a substitution to increase the pace of the game, and you are waiting to 71 minutes to bring that speed in Ahmad and Dalot, right? Dalot came on earlier. I think Dalot came on in the 61st minute. Him and Ugarte. Yes, that kind of created a bit of speed in the team, in the game. But when you look at it technically, it doesn't help. We need speed up front because they are using speed up front. So if we need speed, you already have Cunha running at full speed. Mbeumo is struggling. You take Šeško off. That takes away an element of the attack, and you bring in another tactical element in Ahmad. But instead, he leaves Šeško on and still brings on Xerxes. That's still not speed. We need to run at the centre backs. Their centre backs and their full backs are having a field day. Lewis Hall and Trippier were dealing with us, especially Lewis Hall, constantly fouling Cunha, right? And Cunha obviously is not going to sit there. He's going to dive. He's going to fall when he's needed. But that was not the situation. We brought on Ugarte and we brought on Ugarte and Dalot, and then where's the pace in that? Maybe Dalot, yes, Ugarte, yes, but we need speed in the forward line. But that wasn't to be, right? Now the Osula goal is where the issue is, and that was the moment that ended the streak in the 90th minute. You know, this was a tactical disaster for a team chasing a Champions League spot. Newcastle are down to 10 men. They are tired. Kieran Trippier, his shrewd pass down the line. Will Osula stumbles. Our defenders relax for a split second, especially Tyrone Malacia, who was coming on for Mazraoui, who was already injured. Assuming the threat is over as well, they step back a little bit. Now, with the structural failure in this situation, Osula cuts inside. Where is the cover? Maguire was gonna press on him, but couldn't. Instead of Tyrone Malacia to actually foul him outside the box, and then it doesn't matter. Get the yellow card, take one for the team, and then we'll fight again. Instead, he allows him to break down and stop him outside the box. He didn't need to start doing all that defending thing. Attack him, let him cut you, let him and Maguire face one-on-one. That takes his momentum out. Even if you have to pull him back and get a yellow card or foul him or something, take one for the team. Which one is that? Back defending. What is that? Right? Stepping back and trying to jockey. Take him down. You're in the last minute. He's running at full speed. Right? He cuts inside. Where's the cover? Mazraoui's already been subbed off. The midfield pivot hadn't even dropped to cover the vacated space because everyone was pressing high, and that midfield pivot eventually became a Mazraoui and Emmanuel Ugarte and Bruno. Osula bends a top class finish past Lammens, and it was a goal born out of offensive desperation from United, leaving the back door wide open. Now, United finished with a higher XG of 1.89 to Newcastle's 1.21, but then more shots and more corners. But Newcastle had 100% big chance conversion, which took their XG higher, and we were punished for our arrogance in assuming the winner would eventually just happen because we had the extra man. Now, basically, my final take from all of this is, what did we learn from this? What did we learn this game? We learned that Michael Carrick's system is all about transition football, but it also lacks a plan B for disciplined low block, right? We learned that Leny, Yoro, and Yoro-Lammens still need to work on their box communication, which we eventually saw the improvement in the game. But we also learned that Leny Yoro is it's not a new thing to learn, but we know Leny Yoro is young and inexperienced, but I'm not going to blame him for us losing that game, right? We also learned that the race for third and fourth is going down to the final day. Chelsea beat 4-1 to Aston Villa. They beat Aston Villa 4-1. Liverpool lost to Wolves, bottom place Wolves. The door was open for us to solidify our spot and make it 6 points, I think. And then we kicked each shot, and we closed the door, and we shot ourselves on the foot. Now, my final take for this podcast today is basically that Michael Carrick didn't make the substitutions until very late in the second half. That's it. Now, do you think that he waited too long to bring on Ahmad and Xerxes? Let me know your thoughts and feelings. Or was the failure purely down to the players on the pitch not taking their chances? Because if you had brought on Ahmad earlier, like in the 60th minute, let's say it takes 10 minutes to get going, get up to speed, then he can now try to break and create chances. You put him on one-on-one against Lewis Hall. Lewis Hall gets scared, and boom, you pounce on them. Dogu had that in the first game where he played on the right side as a 10 under Amorim, where they planned for a 3-4-3 and we switched to a 4-3-3, and they were worried, and it still was a 3-4-3 in the end. But then they were worried because Dogu was also double teaming. I remember giving an analysis where where I said Dogu on this side and Dalo were double teaming Anthony Gordon and Lewis Hall. At some point, any of them who had the ball, they would double team him. On the other side, he had a certain Cunha, I think, drop back to double team on the left with a left back in that side, I think, if I remember correctly. So I remember that Newcastle were shocked and they saw the way. I mean, if we look at maybe we just take a look at that game, because yeah, I'd like to look at that game and the last game we played against them. This was in December, Boxing Day. That Boxing Day fixture that everybody thought we were lost. Just coming off a streak of wins and draws and a loss to Villa. We faced Newcastle, and Dogu was started in that lineup. You look at that lineup, and you look at that game as well. In the lineup, Dogu was played as, so it was a 4-2-3-1 under Ruben Amorim at the time, and Ugarte started that game, right? Ugarte started that game and had an absolutely good game, right? Mason Mount was subbed off in the 46th minute. Benjamin Šeško had a good game as well, was subbed up in the 60th minute. Jack Fletcher came and played in the 46th minute. Joseph Zirkzee came on in the 60th minute for Šeško, and then Leny came on for Licha Martinez at the 88th minute. Now, when you look at that game, when they came, they thought we were going to see a 3-4-3. They prepared for a 3-4-3, and we played a 4-3-3, a 4-2-3-1, where you had Dogu playing as a right-sided player. And then at some point, you had them line up. I mean, my lineup is sort of like a 3-4-3, where Licha, Heaven, and Shaw were the back three. And then you had Cunha playing kind of like a left 10 or a left wing back. And then you had a Dogu and Mount playing as your 2-10s. And you had Ugarte and Casemiro playing as your mid. And just go up top. And it was switching like that. So we had the opportunity to capitalize on that, but we didn't. So it is what it is anyway. The truth is, that is one of the things that we have to think about. Like, what did Michael Carrick do wrong? Right. Now, also, with Aston Villa coming up in a week, does Leny keep his starting spot after that nervy performance? How would he be feeling? And do we go with, experience of Maguire and maybe another centre-back in Heaven, left-footed centre-back, to put Harry Maguire in his more natural position as a right centre-back? What do you guys think? If Licha comes back, should he go straight into the starting lineup? Will he be fully fit? What do you guys think? So drop your tactical analysis in the comments. Let me know your thoughts and feelings in the comment section. I'll be reading through every single comment, and I'll help and I will, try to use your comments to get over the loss. But also, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you don't have to miss anything as it relates to all things Manchester United. I'll see you on the next one. Thanks so much for watching. Thanks so much for liking, sharing, and subscribing. Take care. Goodbye. And God bless.